How does a woman, a businesswoman of 35 years, someone who has successfully invented medical devices that have been used around the world, begin her journey with angels? That's what we're going to find out today with our wonderful guest, Julie Ryan. We are going to open up a whole new world for you, a world where if you are a businesswoman or a businessman, for example, and you're not quite sure how to proceed with that feeling you might have of wanting to experience the angel's love more fully in your life, Julie's got a lot to share with you today. I want to welcome Julie and Carol, and then we're going to have our intention for the morning. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Anaya. I'm delighted to be here with you, and we've had a really interesting start to the day. I'm really delighted to be here talking with Julie. And
hi, Julie.
To be here with you, ladies. Thanks. I'm so honored and touched that I have the opportunity. So thanks so much for inviting me.
Wonderful. All right, everyone. Unless you're driving, if you're listening to this later on one of our podcast stations, just close your eyes and just allow yourself to sit quietly for a moment and take a breath. And call in all the angels of love, all the angels of unconditional love, acceptance, guidance, and support to bring through all the information that will best help everyone listening, everyone who needs to experience a deeper connection with their angels, with the divine. And we thank you for the clear communication you bring through us today. Thank you. It feels better because it's been quite a bumpy road this morning. Glad we hung in there. And that's a good, for me, Julie, it's a really good lead into what it's like, because life sometimes gets messy, as we were saying earlier, doesn't it? And how the focus that we can choose to have, even when everything appears to be going wrong, can always bring us back to this moment of connection.
Absolutely. Stay in Switzerland.
Beautiful place to go.
I even have on my phone, I can pull it up for you, but I have a picture of a Swiss chalet on a mountaintop with the Alps behind it and a Swiss flag in front of it, on a flagpole. And if I'm feeling, extra stressed or something and I'm not able to pull myself out of it quickly, I just look at that picture and I go, okay, stay in Switzerland.
That works fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. It's finding what works for us individually, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Julie, okay, so here you are. Now, askjulieryan.com is Julie's website. Go pay her a visit. You'll find out a lot of information there. But we're going to get Julie back on another program on Angel Heart Radio where we can really talk more fully about her book and everything else that Julie offers. So, Julie, let's just backtrack. Okay, so you're a businesswoman. You have a model for your life. How in the world did you then come to experience the angel's love? How did you know? What happened?
Well, I've always believed in angels. I was raised Roman Catholic and, we're inundated, went through 12 years of Catholic schools. So we're inundated with angels and saints. My mother and my grandmothers, when they'd lose something, they'd say a prayer to Saint Anthony to find it. Tony, look around, something's lost and must be found. I heard that my whole life. And, I thought it was hilarious that my mother and grandmother were calling the saint by his nickname, Tony. But I think I was always inundated with it. And then when about 26 years ago, I had a girlfriend that gave me a book for my birthday one year. And it was about, it's called Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mays. And it compares Catholicism to Judaism to the Muslim faith. And it was fascinating. And this woman called herself a medical intuitive. And I thought, what the heck is that? As an inventor of surgical devices, I'd been in the medical industry for decades, but I'd never heard that term. So I read her book, and then I wanted to know more about what is a medical intuitive. And I was led to another book called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan, who's a former NASA physicist who parlays complex quantum physics theories into understandable language for the non-scientific person, of which I am a non-scientific person. And that was how my journey started. And then I studied for 6 years with a graduate of Barbara Brennan School. And as I was doing that, more intuitive and psychic abilities came in, including being able to see and communicate with angels. And now, after 26 years, I say I'm a businesswoman who learned how to do woo-woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness.
Love it.
Communicate with any spirit, alive or deceased, and I anywhere in the world, and it's just been remarkable.
Wow. I love it.
Wow.
Isn't that great, Carol? I love that.
It is great.
Learned how to do woo-woo.
Yeah, learned how to do woo-woo. I like that too. But
Yeah.
Carolyn, sorry.
Let's just get it head on, because you tell somebody you're a spiritual healer or you're a psychic, and they kind of look at you like, what? So I find that if I bring humor into it right up front, it disarms them, and so they laugh, and then they say, okay, well, tell me more. What are you talking about? What is that? And so it works for me anyway.
Yeah, Carolyn Macy is just the most amazing person. We've read a lot of her books and have her CDs and everything, and her life story and her journey and what she's done is just really, really a great read. And she's just somebody to really set a great example for all of us. So very interesting.
And in my book, Angelic Attendance, what really happens as we transition from this life into the next, I talk about what my journey is. How did this all come in for me? I learned how to do this stuff. I wasn't born with dead people chasing me. Or if I had them, I didn't know it, let alone what I would have done with it had I known. But I learned how to do all of that. And I talk about that in the book as far as how did it come in? It came in stages. And then I was able to see deceased loved ones. I was able to see angels. I'm talking about in my mind's eye and communicate with them.
And that's really wonderful, isn't it? Because I like how you say, and I'm talking about in my mind's eye, because different people may have different ways of experiencing the angels. And we know this, Carol, not only from our work, but from radio work as well. And it's a fantastic thing, because often people think, well, if they're not doing it the same way as somebody else, they're not doing it right. I was listening to the audio of your book yesterday, and I'm just really fascinated by a lot of the stuff you have in there. And I'm really excited to talk to you about that on another program, really fully. So with your work with angels, how have they helped you through, because everyone has challenges in life. We know this. So is there something that you can share with people who may be going through challenges in their own personal lives right now and aren't quite sure what outcomes are going to be? How do you find working with your angels? When I say working, I mean the living, breathing, day to day, I'm in trouble, angels, I need help stuff. How does that work for you individually?
I don't necessarily call on them for help, because I know they're there and they're putting thoughts into my head. What I try and do, like I said earlier, and we laughed, but this is what I really do. I do my best to stay neutral. I do my best to stay in Switzerland. And I find that if I'm feeling sad, mad, angry, frustrated, whatever, that's my spirit telling me, hey girl, you're out of alignment. You need to look at the situation from a different perspective. And so I go to, okay, how is this benefiting me? Wonder what the outcome's going to be. I go to curiosity. As soon as I go to curiosity, I raise my vibrational level. I immediately feel better. And then that allows me to be a vessel to receive guidance from my angels, my spirit guides, God, the whole group, my deceased ones. So I don't necessarily say, hey, Archangel Michael, help me get out of this bind. I go to a neutral place to change the frequency of the vibration of the thoughts I'm pulling in, because thoughts don't originate in our heads. We pull them in from ether. And we get on a frequency. Every thought has a frequency. So if we're on that frequency where we're on a negative frequency of negative thoughts, you know, we've all had situations where we have a negative thought and then that breeds another negative thought. And before we know it, we're in this hamster wheel of these negative thoughts. So we need to disrupt that frequency. And by doing that, how is this benefiting me? Go to neutral. Then I'm able to be in curiosity and I'm able to receive guidance. And guidance comes in the form of a thought, because that's how spirits communicate most of the time. In my experience, it's telepathically, whether it's an angel or a spirit guide or a deceased loved one or God or whomever.
That's a great way of getting through that, and would be a great help to a lot of people who are listening, Julie. I think that's really good.
I've come up with I call it a trick. May I share it with you?
Yes, go ahead.
For all, I teach this in my classes. I teach people around the world how to communicate with spirit and do all this stuff that I do. And my trick I've named, I don't even know where this came from. Probably one of my angels, you know, put the thought in my head, but I call it the 2-minute rule. And the 2-minute rule is when I feel a negative emotion, I know I'm out of alignment, because our spirit is pure love and light, you know, and it's all pure love, which is a high vibration. So when I'm feeling badly, I know I'm out of alignment. I know I'm on the fear end of the emotional scale. So if I'm feeling badly, let's say, for instance, I'm in the grocery store and I'm 20th in line and I have an appointment and I have to buy whatever it is I'm trying to buy. And so I'm getting stressed about it. The 2-minute rule is, I say to myself, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? Seriously. And if it's not, it's false. It's a false belief. If something is going to kill you in the next 2 minutes, you know, like you're standing in the road, you need to get out of the road before that truck runs you over because it's going to kill you. That's a rational fear. Yeah. Everything else that isn't going to kill you in the next 2 minutes is an irrational fear. It's fake. It's false. It's stuff we're making up. Yeah. We want to disrupt that frequency. So the disruptor for me is, you know, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? And usually I laugh.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And then once you get that disrupted, then you can go back and I can reverse engineer it and say, okay, so if I'm late for my meeting, here are my thoughts. I'm going to be late for my meeting. They're going to think I'm irresponsible. If I'm irresponsible, I'm not going to get this deal. If I don't get this deal, you know, I mean, you go down this hole of nonsense that we're making up. So let's just disrupt it at the beginning and then be pulling in inspirational thoughts.
Yeah.
So that's the 2-minute rule that I teach everybody.
That's a really, really good rule. And it's a really powerful tool, because we can use that for absolutely every single situation, event that we are ever going to experience. And Carol, that's mine. I'm just telling Carol. I know she's writing that down for her takeaway. We do takeaways at the end of the show where we share with you personal things that really had a significance for us. And I could see Carol writing a big, that's my dang takeaway.
It's really funny, Julie, because 9 times out of 10 when we're doing the takeaway, we've both chosen the same thing. So, all right, Anaya, that's yours. I'll pick that.
I'll share it with you. I'll share it with you. But it's really fantastic. And I love that you have so much humor. There's so much seriousness around. And I find working in that amazing frequency of the angelic spirit, it is such a light, beautiful, fun place to be.
Absolutely.
You know, and the amount of times I can take myself so seriously, like I can do that at the drop of a hat. That's no sweat for me whatsoever. But to have that beautiful presence come in and really shine the light on how I am creating this experience for myself simply by the choice that I'm exercising, to take it all way too seriously. And at the time, it feels like a really big deal. It feels like a really serious thing. But like you say, by the time you start going down that road of, if I do this and if I'm late, then they'll think, then this will happen. that is a no-win situation. That is never going to pan out in a loving outcome or in a way that makes us feel nourished, supported, whole, and healthy.
And over here in the States, we laugh. I tell people who are American, I say, it's fake news. It's stuff we're making up. Our president likes to call everything fake news. And so, this is fake news. We're making it all up. And it's not, to your point, and it's not going to happen. And we're making it up, and it makes us feel awful. And so what's the point? Just knock it off at the beginning. Yeah. It works great for to your point, for every situation.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I have students that I've taught this trick, I call it a trick too, who teach their little kids this.
Oh, I love it.
You teach your grandkids. I've taught my grandkids this. I've taught my son, who's 27, this. And these little kids, one of my students emailed me yesterday, and she said, my 6-year-old had a test. It came back with a U on it, which meant unsatisfactory. You know, they don't put F's on little kids' tests anymore. So it had an unsatisfactory. And he said, Mommy, I used the 2-minute rule. It makes me feel so much better, and I know that I'll do better on the next test.
Oh.
How much grief can we spare our children and our grandchildren?
Yep.
You know, if we can teach them something that's that simple that early in life, so they don't have to suffer all the nonsense that we all have been through with God only knows whatever situations we've had to encounter.
And that intense pressure around exams, I can still remember being in that situation. I mean, exams were nothing like they are today when I was going to school. But I can remember having that sensation of being absolutely locked in fear and my mind being a complete and total blank. And academically, I was not brilliant at all. And of course, the way I learn is by doing and having joy about what I'm doing. So there was none of that in school then, probably isn't now in lots of situations. So to have that understanding, and I mean, kids it gets very dire for kids. And I remember when my kids were in high school and I sat them down and I said, look, everyone wants to do well in exams. We all do. But at the end of the day, it's not going to rule your life if you don't. You're told it will, but it won't. Most important thing is that you come out the other end knowing that you are okay, that you've not failed, and anything you need to learn, you can learn.
Yeah.
So if you come home and you don't have a good mark on you, it's not going to be a problem for me. We'll figure out another way for you to learn it, which we did.
Well, I think education in general, the methodologies that are used are so antiquated in today's world. You know, why do you need to learn the periodic table in chemistry? You look it up on your phone and it's right there. Why do you, it's just like the Dewey Decimal System in libraries. They don't use it anymore.
No.
Because they don't need it. And I think education has not, you know, it just needs a revamp all over the world. They make them memorize all this stuff that's useless.
Yeah. So
I agree with you.
And, you know, Archangel Zadkiel is a great one for me. I'm always calling on Zadkiel. And Uriel as well. I need knowledge. I need enlightenment around something. And it's absolutely staggering how easy it makes everything, because what I need will suddenly pop up.
Right. Because you're on that frequency.
Exactly.
Asking for that help, which gets you into the right channel. It's like they're, you know, the old-fashioned switchboards where they plug in. That
was my first job, using one of those.
Is that right? So it's
second job.
Plugging you into the right frequency to get the information you need that you've requested.
Yeah. Carol?
Yes, so you're still doing that job, really, Anaya. You know, you're plugging people in to the right, where they need to go to get that. And yes, so talking about education, you know, it is a lot of the stuff that the kids are taught is just not really of any use to them. I think this education system is so stuck in what it's taught for years, that it's not starting to look outside, it's not starting to look laterally at what else is around and how we can use technology. As you say, it's on their phone, it's on their iPad. So why do they need to cram it into their brain when they could be learning something else and just looking it up on their device?
Exactly.
And the joy. Where is the joy? For me, it's all about, as you so brilliantly opened this conversation with, Julie, it's about what frequency. And we think everything originates in our mind. And as you've helped us to go down that path, it doesn't actually. There are multiple streams of consciousness all around us all the time. And we are slotting into them, if you like, aren't we? And then we just can go along with that. And
there's a wonderful TED Talk. You familiar with TED Talk? There's a wonderful TED Talk by a professor named Lisa Feldman Barrett, Barrett. And she talks about emotion and how our thoughts don't originate in our heads. And it's a 12-minute talk, TED Talk. It's fabulous. And I think it's a great illustrator of how we get on these frequencies of thoughts, and then we think, well, they're true, but they're not.
No, they're not. And how freeing is that? It's really opens up our perception to such a great awareness. And once that, okay, so you just think about, say when you were a kid and you didn't know how to read, for example, the awareness was you couldn't read, right? So we take steps and we learn to read.
Right.
All right. We can learn whatever it is that we need to learn. How we learn it is up to us, right? We can learn it in a really difficult way that doesn't bring us any joy and makes us feel like, you know what? Or we can learn it in a way that is fun for us, interesting, engaging, entertaining for us. When my grandson was little, he loved to sing. He loved to hear singing. And I said to Erin, you want to teach Beatty anything, sing it to him. So he would be trying to learn how to pronounce a difficult word. I would break it down in syllables and sing it, and he'd get it. Boom.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing too that's important is how do people learn, and how you can tell how somebody learns. Their primary way that they learn is to ask them a memory question. Like, you know, if I was going to ask either one of you a question, I would ask you a question like, what do you remember about your first car? Tell me about your first car. And what's the first thing that pops into your head when I ask you that?
It was blue.
Okay. Carol, how about you?
I didn't actually own a car, but the first one I learned to drive on was a black Holden. That was my dad's. So
it was a black
Holden.
Black Holden.
Black.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're both visual learners because you gave me a color. You told me what it looked like. If you had said, oh, this car sounded like a kitten, it just purred, it sounded so good, that would let me know you were an auditory learner. If you said, oh, this car had the smoothest ride, it was like sitting on your couch in your living room when you drove down the street, that would be a kinesthetic learner.
Yeah.
Primary kinesthetic learner. So when we know that about people, then you can communicate to them in a way that their brain's going to be able to absorb whatever the message is that you're sending. And it's just phenomenal when you know that with children, let alone with adults. I used to have a lot of sales reps that worked for me for various companies that I owned, and I would teach them, okay, ask your client a memory question and see how they answer you. And then that's going to tell you how you need to present the sales pitch to them. You know, can't you see when this happens? Can't you hear the praise you're going to get? Can't you feel the excitement? And then you tailor that to how the person absorbs the information. And it works great.
That's wonderful. That's really a good way of explaining it too, because I talk to people about, you know, whether they're clairvoyant or clairaudient and all of that. But this is another way of looking at it completely. Great.
Exactly.
Yeah, the other thing is if you watch their eyes, a visual learner is going to look up when because they're looking in their head. Okay, they look up. They don't even know they're doing it. You know, I mean, little teeny kids do this when you ask them a memory question. If it's somebody who's an auditory learner, they're going to look side to side, and a kinesthetic learner is going to look down and to the left.
Right.
And this is all basic NLP, neuro-linguistic learning, which is so helpful in whatever you're doing. If you're communicating with somebody, whether it be a child or a client or a lover or a husband or whatever, it works great.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is really important for me, and I think it's important for a lot of people, because it's helping me and others to understand that we have so many choices available to us, but we may not necessarily be aware of those choices. And bringing it back to the angels, having the support and guidance of these divinely inspiring, loving beings helps me in my everyday life. And I ask them all the time, Shamuel, whatever, keys, come to me. Shamuel, I've lost my keys, right? Or Michael, whatever it is. When I get in my car, I always request the most benevolent outcome for the safety and protection of my car, myself, and for everyone around me. Right? Boom, done. So once we come back to that understanding, or even tap into that knowledge, the awareness, the possibility that we have so much divine support all around us that we can use here on earth in very practical ways, no matter what we are dealing with, no matter what walk of life we're from, no matter whether we're, a rocket scientist or someone, working in a bakery. That's all irrelevant. We are all spiritual beings living this human experience, and there's a lot of help available. Julie, there's a lot of help available. Divine help, spiritual help.
All of us have a guardian angel that's with us in every lifetime. The same guardian angel stays with us from through all of our lifetimes, and they're always with us. And so I think little children are taught a lot of the time that the guardian angel's there with them. When I was a little girl, we used to say the guardian angel prayer every night before we went to bed. And I think that we've lost sight of that as a society, as a culture, most of us.
Yeah.
And what is it that our ancestors had, and what were they able to, to access when they were less educated, quite frankly? I think it's almost like the spirituality's been educated out of a lot of us, especially in Western culture.
Yes, the technology side is sort of coming over and it's overtaking, and we just need to bring the spiritual side back in and let it come into the fore, because it's always been there, as you say. And it's just a fact of us letting it have its, even if it's only an equal space, if you're a scientific type person, and that's a major part of your life, but you can have the balance with the spiritual life in it. And that's one of the things I find that helps me in life. I like to make sure that I like to feel that I'm in balance with everything that I do, whichever side of it is I'm working on, it all needs to be in balance, and that's important for me.
Right. And I'm seeing a merging of the two, the scientific and the spiritual happening. Case in point, in one of my classes this summer, I had a student who was a retired rocket scientist. And he was literally a retired rocket scientist. And he was working on some complex theorem. And so he wanted to get Albert Einstein's input on helping him solve this problem. So we called Einstein in the class, and he had this discussion with Einstein, and they were talking in these technical physics terms. And the rest of us, there were 12 of us that were watching this, the rest of us were all saying, okay, but he got the answer that he wanted. So Carol, to your point, we can access unlimited information through spirituality that can help us in our human existence. Not only inventing and new things to help humankind, but also solving problems and And Anea, like you were saying, you know, you call in your angels for help when you've lost your keys or whatever.
Thing, yeah.
That capability, and certainly throughout time, I think that our ancestors have done that, regardless of what culture they've been living in.
And I love it, Julie, because I'm hearing so much inclusion here. We're talking about angels, we're talking about guardian angels, we're talking about spirit guides, we're talking about ancestors, we're talking about these incredibly learned souls who have information and knowledge that they want to share with us if we are of a mind to ask and be open to receiving. So it's bringing us back into that beautiful space of, instead of seeing us all as separate and all these compartments, here we all are. We are part of this oneness, the divine oneness of everything. And how we choose to experience that, of course, is our free will. That's why we're here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for someone like you, Julie, and I've had the benefit of more time with you before the show, because Carol's been away, everyone, cruising around New Zealand, having a fab time. And Julie and I got to spend some time together, and it was fantastic. And learning more about how you work in your world and how you perceive your world and what that means for you as an individual. I would like to mention the name of your book, Angels in Attendance. Julie Ryan, askjulieryan.com. You'll find so much.
Angelic Attendance.
Sorry, Angelic Attendance. Thank you. And hearing about how you describe as a person's passing, I know this is slightly off topic, Carol, for where we normally go.
That's all right. I'm happy.
Thank you. And hearing about how you describe the formation and how these angelic presences come in. And one thing that I'm still trying to get my head around it, actually, and it made me cry, Julie. It really made me cry because when you said if your mum's, you know, in spirit, she's the first one that comes in. And I thought, oh, Mummy, you know, here she'll be when it's my time. But one of the really cool things was, and I want to know more about this, my brain went boing when you said it's the mother who calls in the angels.
Right.
I've always believed, and so I'm interested to learn more about it from you so I can think about it for myself. I've always believed that Azrael would be the first angel present. So tell us a little bit about this.
Well, when anyone is dying, we're all going to die eventually. And regardless of if a person dies instantly, like in a homicide or a suicide or an accident, or they take days, weeks, months, years. There's a gal that's called into my show for 2 years, and it took her father 2 years to die. I have come up with what I call the 12 phases of transition. And it's how angels and our deceased loved ones surround us as we're dying, whether it happens instantly or whether it happens like in this woman's dad's case over 2 years. And the mother spirit, the closest maternal spirit to the person who's dying, is the one who shows up first, and then the paternal spirit shows up second, but it's the mother spirit that runs the show. Brings in the angels, brings in the other deceased loved ones. I call them the Welcome to Heaven Committee.
Oh, I love it.
You know, in some instances, I have seen hundreds of thousands of spirits there to welcome the person to heaven. And they're dressed in period clothing, which is interesting. So I believe they're from all lifetimes. You know, it's like, hey, welcome home when we go back to heaven. But yeah, it's the mother spirit. We think that when our kids are raised that our job is done, and it's not, because we're helping them transition from the spirit world. And for instance, my mother's deceased, but if my mother was still alive, then it would be my maternal grandmother. If my maternal grandmother would be alive, it would be my maternal grandmother's mother. It's always on the maternal line.
Okay.
And it would be my dad. My dad was dead. It would be my mother's dad. See, it's all the maternal line, which is fascinating. And the first time I witnessed all of this was when my own mother was dying in 1992, or I mean, in 2002. In 2002, and it was really remarkable. And what I figured out was what I was seeing was the scenario that I believe everybody has seen since the beginning of time. And as we've gotten more well educated, again, the spiritual part of the equation has gone by the wayside for some people. But there's a prayer said at the end of every Catholic funeral called In Paradisum, every Roman Catholic funeral. And it talks about the angels and your loved ones will, your deceased loved ones will greet you and lead you into paradise. And when I was writing my book, I did research, and the best I could find was that it originated as a 5th century Gregorian chant. So I have to believe that since the beginning of time, people have been able to see this transition, these phases of transition. And perhaps it took till the 5th century for someone to be learned enough to be able to read and write and compose this chant, which was a prayer. And certainly some of the most learned people at the time, it was all men, you know, certainly some of the most learned men were in the monasteries because they were the scribes and they were the ones that were the keepers of the historic documents. So I find that fascinating, and everybody goes through it, whether it's instantly or whether it's over days, weeks, months. There's lots of information out there about near-death experiences and the afterlife, but I haven't found much, if anything, about what happens from the spiritual standpoint as we're dying.
Yeah.
As the dying process, what happens, and that's what I talk about.
And that was what was so fascinating to me, having that so recently with both my parents passing. That's what it really just grabbed my attention, Julie, and it helped me actually a lot. And to know that, you know, her mum was there, you know, her loved ones were there, and you go through these 12 and what the positioning is in the book, and it's an audio book as well, everyone. And pets, you know, all these loved ones, because again, it's coming back to that connection that we have, that heart connection. And this is a very big thing for you, Carol. It's a big part of your work, isn't it?
And you know, I was pleased when you said about the mother's mother, the maternal grandmother, because when Danielle, my daughter, passed away at 6, because I was still alive, my mother was still alive, and I had never met my mother's mother because she had passed when my mother was only 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so as you're talking about that, I'm sort of putting pieces into place as you're talking about that, and it's interesting because I have been feeling recently that my mother's mother, my grandmother, who I never met, obviously, is close to me. I'm feeling her energy. I'm just going all shivery and goosebumpy as I'm talking about this, and I'm feeling her energy more and more. And I've always been aware of Danielle's and my mother's energy since my mother passed. But, you know, I just found that fascinating because I believe that Danielle actually chose the day she passed. She'd been sick for 2 years. Yeah. And Barry, my husband, had gone away to get our furniture in Sydney, and so he wasn't there. I was the only one there with our other daughter and some friends. And I believe she chose that time because she just wanted to go, and she didn't want to be taken to a hospital and put on machines and blah, blah, blah. And I believe that she was secure that I was the one there that was going to be there with her at the time. But now I feel so good to know that my maternal grandmother's energy was there with me. I mean, I just went through a horrible time for quite a long while after that, but and went against everything I'd grown up with. But, you know, I've now come back around the full circle, and this has just put another piece in the puzzle for me. So thank you for that, Julie. I really, really appreciate that, and I just feel so good. It's just beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. The other thing that's interesting about that, and I can save this for later if you want me to, but what happens is that when the spirit is starting to detach from the body, it hangs on to the top of the head. It looks like a cartoon caption bubble that you'd see the words in a cartoon, the characters' thoughts or words that they're saying. And halfway through the 12 phases, there are extra angels that show up. So the angels are in a circle surrounding the person who's dying. And then they open up into a horseshoe and eventually a straight line at the person's foot. Like, for instance, if they're in the bed, at the foot of the bed. And the interesting thing to me is that halfway through the phases, there are 2 extra angels that show up on either side of the spirit bubble, and their wings start to move. And it reminded me of this giant owl. You know, you probably documentaries about giant owls, and their wings are they're smooth, they're rhythmic, but they're silent. So I was just watching this slow motion of these wings moving. And I thought, well, this is interesting, because the first time I saw it was with my own mother. And I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. So what it does is it opens up a hole above the head, and a vortex forms from the angel's wings moving. And the vortex has an upward pull. It's like, have you ever sat in your car and gone through a car wash at the end when that dryer starts up and it sucks all the water off your car? You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
You know, it's just got all that suction. And so the interesting thing about that is I was thinking, oh my goodness, these angel wings are causing this physical sensation that I can feel, and it's helping the spirit, my mother's spirit, separate from her body. And that's the vortex that the spirit goes through when they finally exit. And near-death experience, people talk about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what they're seeing, that vortex. So when I'm putting my book together, I'm researching. I was inspired to just research. I Googled giant owl wings vortex, and there's unlimited drawings and stuff. It's called the wingtip vortex. Anything that flies, whether it's a bird, a bug, a plane, a jet, whatever, causes a wingtip vortex, which causes the lift. There's all this aeronautical engineering stuff out there. And so I thought it was remarkable that these angel wings moving was causing a wingtip vortex that causes the upward lift. And here's all this validation online in the form of aeronautical engineering principles.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it's all melding together.
Yeah, the spirit and the scientific. Absolutely.
And I love it because it's askjulieryan.com, and it's the ask. It's you asked about that. You went and asked Google, give me some information. Now, Carol, isn't it fascinating that the owl has been mentioned?
Yes, it has.
Do you want to tell Julie a bit about that?
Okay, so it's probably about 2 months before I went on holidays, suddenly there were 2 tawny-mouth owls in a tree right near my house, very close. I could just take 10 steps and I could see the owls. And they would be there. They were there every day for weeks, about 6 weeks altogether. And Anaya came over and had a look at them, and each morning they were there. And it was just such a positive sign for me that the owls were there. And then the owls disappeared. And then only one owl came back, and the other owl was killed. We don't know how, but the other owl we found the other owl's body in our yard. Aww. So I went out and I spoke to the owl spirit, and I knew I had a great connection to owls' feathers through various people I'd associated with. And I asked the owl spirit if I could have the feathers. And so I have the owl's feathers. And the other owl hasn't come back, but I believe that they were there because I believe that to me, an owl, because it can see at night, it can see through the illusion of the veil, and it gives a lot of clearer visions to many things if that's the way you want to look at it. And so to me, the owl's feathers were very important, and I felt that the owls were there to tell me that the pathway I'm now on at the moment is the correct pathway at this time for me. So they meant a lot to me.
And then Carol spoke to me about, because she has the 2 intact wings.
Oh my
so
gosh.
She said, have a think about whether or not you would like one of the wings. And it was a really powerful time because I took my young grandson Bailey over, who's 7, and we were able to share with Bailey that we can communicate with the owl spirit and ask permission. Is it okay for us to have a wing?
Mm-hmm.
Which we have. And he went in and he asked and he said, yes, it's okay. Carol allowed him to choose the wing he would like, and it's here. So Carol and I have a fully formed wing each of this amazing creature. And one of the messages I got very clearly from that was, of course, the educational aspect. You know, the owls are always wise, aren't they? And they've got big eyes and they can see all this knowledge and information and pass it on. And I mean, the owl in Winnie the Pooh is just like love.
Right.
So it was really wonderful to be able to bring Bailey's education in that way as well. And the privilege of being a part of the journey with you, Carol, then being able to share it with my grandson. And Bailey has a real connection with Carol. It was an instant connection. And I would just say to Bailey, you know, on holiday time, guess what we're doing? And he'd go, oh, we're going to Carol's. You know, like, you know, we're going to the movies. Oh, couldn't we go to Carol's? So again, it's this presence. It's the divinity of the oneness. We can look at these and say, okay, these are isolated incidents, but they're not. And they're all the energy, the weaving of this energy, the tapestry that is constantly being created by us all. And now here we are sharing part of our tapestry with each other and weaving into each other's tapestry as well. Everyone watching, everyone listening, you're a part of it now too. And it's the wisdom that we all have access to, and we all actually are, and we have forgotten, and we've been taught. And like you, I love that phrase you used earlier. We can reverse engineer anything. How am I feeling? We can reverse engineer that back to a time where we felt safe, or we felt loved, or we felt wise. You know, and the angels have been very instrumental in teaching me about reverse engineering everything to get to a place of the truth of the wholeness of my divinity, of your divinity, of Carol's, of everyone's divinity, especially when it's someone that I really am not communicating very well with. Reverse engineer that. Was there a time, and maybe it wasn't even in this life experience? We're here for a reason together.
Yeah.
May I share my
yes.
On the owl story?
Oh gosh, yes, love you too.
The owls are they are the symbol of death, actually.
Ah.
And if you look up symbolism of owls, they are the death messenger. And
that's interesting.
What I got when you two were telling this story about your owls, Carol, is that the owls came to you, and they're the symbol of death. So they came to you because one of them was going to die, and they wanted you to know about it, and they wanted you to have the wings because they wanted, that was all part of the master plan, was they knew that you would go search for that other one and you would find it. And I think that was all part of the spiritual connection that we're talking about. That's what I got.
Thank you for that. That's beautiful. Yes, I had actually looked up owls and saw about they were the symbol of death, and we discussed that, didn't we, Anaya? And yeah, so that's interesting.
But look how much joy they've brought.
Yes.
In the death of the one owl, not only to both of you, but to your grandbaby.
Yeah.
to whoever sees them. And how remarkable that you have that whole full wing. I mean,
Yeah.
Yep.
it's like museum,
Yeah.
museum stuff.
And then we can continue that, can't we? And saying to Bailey, you know, like, have a look, the ants. This hour is going back into nature. Nature never creates waste. Nature never creates rubbish, junk. It's always about renewal. It's always about rebirth. And that for me is very beautiful and exciting, but it's also very calming and comforting. You know, it's the continual cycle, this loving cycle that never ever creates anything harmful. You know, and when we are feeling that we are disconnected from that, it's the opportunity to go back in. Always go within, the angels say to me. All your answers are within. They're not inside your body. They're not inside your head. They are within the fold of the one love, of the divinity and perfection that is the spiritual truth of each and every person, no matter how we're behaving here on earth. Right. And that can be a big one to get your head around, can't it?
Well, and I get asked a lot about what happens to spirits of people that we think are awful, like a Hitler. And some people don't like my answer, but the bottom line is all spirits are pure love and light.
Yes.
And all of the nastiness of somebody is their part of their human personality, and it stays with the body when the body and the spirit separate. So everybody goes to heaven. There's no judgment in heaven. And everybody is pure love and light. And that's hard for people to talk about, hard for people to wrap their heads around.
Especially with a figure like that, where that created so much pain and disharmony. And we don't need to go down that road, but everyone knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that is for me, I'm really glad you brought this up. For me, it's again, like, sometimes the duality of that is overwhelming for me. But then the duality is the untruth of the situation, isn't it? There is no duality in truth, in the loving light of truth. And I was talking to someone this morning, and it's about, you know, we're all judging others and ourselves all the time, right? It's part of being human. So the trick about that for me is when I notice I'm judging, is not judging myself about the judging. Because then I'm caught up in all this judging. Oh, I can't believe you're thinking that, Anaya. You know what I mean? To come out of that and into this loving space. Well, okay, so let's just say I'm having a judging thought about whatever, about myself.
Go to Switzerland.
Go to Switzerland, because exactly right. Because in the neutral territory, that's where all the heavy stuff falls away, because it can't exist there.
That's right.
It can't exist there. But what does exist and what we can harmonize with and expand with is the divine principle of love, of the truth of what love really is. Not about being in love, I love you, I don't love you. You know what I mean? That's what's exciting about this.
Love is acceptance. You accept the situation the way it is. You know everything's always unfolding perfectly.
Yeah.
You know that it's happening in your best interest based on what your spirit wants to experience in this lifetime. And when you stay in Switzerland and you just know that it's all unfolding perfectly, then you can be in that higher vibrational level and receive guidance from your angels and your spirit guides and your deceased loved ones and God, and not necessarily in that order. I'm not, you know, doing a hierarchy here, but just from the whole group, you know, from all spirit that is there to advise us. And you mentioned earlier that we have to ask. We have to be curious. We have to ask, because spirit is not gonna, the angels and God and our deceased loved ones are not gonna say, you have to do this and you have to do it in this way and you have to do it in this time frame and all of that. It's when we ask for help, all we have to do is ask, and then they're going to give us guidance.
Yeah, but and then go to Switzerland so we can hear the guidance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
when you're feeling badly and you're in a low vibrational state. Yeah, because they're broadcasting the guidance on the classical music station, and you're tuned to the rap station. So you can't get the guidance because it's on a different frequency. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. But yes, I understand what you're saying about people talking about Hitler and everybody is all about love. I've talked to people about that, and they just have this, it's like this barrier comes down. You know, they think that's not possible. And it doesn't really matter, because then they're not in the right frequency. They're not in the right place at that time to actually process what we've talked about. So, yeah.
Well, and it's hard to change old paradigms, what people are taught their whole lives. And then we're asking them to think about it in a totally different way. May I share a story about my dad when he was dying along those lines? My dad was, he was in the Navy in World War II, and he decided to go into the seminary. And so he went to the seminary in Rome at the Vatican. He graduated from the Gregorian University in Rome and went on the GI Bill. That's what paid for his education. So he drank the Kool-Aid. He left 6 months before he was ordained. Thank you, God, because I wouldn't be here and my siblings wouldn't be here. I used to laugh and I'd say, yeah, I appeared to him in a dream. And I said, Dad, what are you thinking? Come on. Anyway, so he was dying. My mother had died 4 years previously, and he was dying, and he was in the hospital, and he was in a coma. So of course I was with him at night. My siblings were there during the day, and I could communicate with him telepathically. Well, he was afraid to die because he drank the serious Kool-Aid at the Vatican, for God's sakes, about he's going to have to go to purgatory, or he, God forbid, would go to hell or whatever. And I find people are afraid because they don't know when they die if they're going to fly or fry. So they've had that whole. My dad had drunk the big Kool-Aid, so I kept saying, Dad, that's not the way it works. I've never seen angels drop anybody into a fiery pit. You're going to get heaven. This is a telepathic conversation. One of my girlfriends, who's a psychologist, said, "Are there any deceased clergy in the room?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, there are." And she said, "Do you know any of them?" And I said, "Yeah, this priest who was a friend of the family had died 6 months previously. His name was Father Hanley." So she said, "Well, ask him if he can intervene." So I did. I asked Father Hanley's spirit. I said, "Can you help with this? He's afraid to die because he's afraid he's going to have to burn in purgatory for a long time." And he laughed. He was a character when he was alive. So next thing I know, I'm watching this scene in my dad, and he's in the intensive care unit. I'm watching this scene in my dad's room, and it's full of dead popes and and they're all in their pope outfits. I mean, like the hat, the red shoes, the whole 9 yards. So Father Henry is at my dad's right shoulder, and my dad's on a ventilator. He's unconscious, and there's a pope next to him, standing at my dad's right shoulder. So I said to Father Hanley, I said, "Who is that?" And he said, "It's Pius XII." I said, "Well, of course it's Pius XII. Pius XII was in office when my father was in the seminary in Rome. And when my dad's bishop would come to visit every other year, he would take my dad with him to visit Pope Pius XII. So Pius said to him, with all these hundreds of dead popes in the room, he said, "Tom, there's no hell. You're coming to heaven with us. You come when you're ready." And then they all disappeared. And so my dad died a few hours later.
Wow.
And so my girlfriend, Angela, speaking of angels, she was born on the Feast of the Angels. So she was named Angela. Angela, Dr. Angie baby, my son calls her when she got her doctorate. Angela said to me, "Your dad doesn't believe that you're an authority on the church." I said, "Well, not." And she said, "Is there a clergy in the room? Is there someone who can intervene?" Well, who better is my dad going to believe than all these dead popes?
Yeah.
And that's like the hierarchy of the church telling him that.
Yeah.
So I find it fascinating that sometimes the people who are having the toughest time transitioning and letting go and going ahead and dying are the ones who are the most religious, inundated with all this doctrine that's all fake. It's fake news. It's
fake news. Yep.
throughout the ages to control the masses.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And
yeah.
it reminds me of that great quote by Elizabeth Gilbert when she was asked what kind of a God she believes in. And she said, I believe in a loving God.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'm
Right.
saying, I just
Right.
don't believe for a second in an unloving God. And I think that's a wonderful way to start wrapping up the show.
Yeah.
Perfect. And we've got to get you back. We've got to talk more about
definitely. You don't get away with just today.
No, and we want to talk about the medical intuitive stuff. There's so much. Look, askjulieryan.com. Go and check out everything Julie does and has to offer, because I tell you what, there is a lot to this woman. And having experienced my own session with Julie with regards to her medical intuitive blessings, I can absolutely say it's something worth investigating if you feel connected. So, takeaways, Carol. What have you got for us, girl? And you can have the other one and say,
no. I
can't remember what it was now. Say it, because I can't remember what it was. I didn't take any notes except for Lisa Fieldman Barrett. That's the only note I took.
You wanted the 2-minute rule.
Oh, I knew that.
So I really love the fact that, you know, when you were growing up and your mother and all of those would say, Tony, look around. Something's lost and must be found. I'm going to use that. I think that is just priceless. And the two other little short ones were stay in Switzerland.
Yeah.
So that's I think how wonderful is that to have a little tiny something like that when you're starting to feel stressed or out of control. Okay. Breath, stay in Switzerland. I think that's just gold, pure gold. And fake news. We've been on a cruise ship with lots of Americans and boy, oh boy, fake news. So no, the cruise was wonderful, but you know, some of these people were very indoctrinated in their beliefs, but that's fine and good. Everybody is entitled to their own beliefs. And Julie, I've just loved talking to you today, and I'm looking forward to the next time we all get a chance to talk together.
Yeah.
Thank you. I feel the same. What a treat for me.
And for me, Julie, your humor has been wonderful. You know, I love humor. I always say, you know, like, I reckon I'd be dead without my sense of humor, literally. So that's been really wonderful. And because it starts lightening the atmosphere as well. And I love how you are able to, like with the Switzerland, same, Carol, but I love how you explained it so simply and really brought to light again and reminded us all that we think everything's inside our head, and it's not.
No.
And we can go to wherever we want to go by going to Switzerland, getting neutral. And even if we've just got a toe in Switzerland, it's something, right? I was just so grateful to feel that my mum is going to be there for me. That really means a lot. I mean, I know I'm going to see mum again. I know we're not separated except in my own head, yet that meant a lot. You've really got me thinking too about, you say we have one guardian angel. I've always felt that we have at least two. So you're really giving me something to think about for myself as well. For me, it's wonderful to continue to learn all the time and to ask myself about my beliefs. Where do they come from? What do they mean for me? So that's another great takeaway for me today personally. You've opened some doors for me to tune within and see how I feel about lots of different things. So I feel it's just been a real blessing having you on A Vision of Angels with us today. Angel Heart Radio is so blessed because we do get to talk to a lot of fabulous people, but individually, every person always touches our heart and leaves like a little stamp on it, doesn't it, Carol?
It does.
And we've got a little Julie Ryan stamp on my heart now. So it's been beautiful, Julie. Thank you.
Oh, my honor and privilege and delight too. Both are very fun and very smart and very, very wise as well. So the pleasure's been all mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol, is there anything you'd like to
Just
share
looking forward to next time. But, you know, just one other thing. To me, when you talked about the 12 phases, and I could then finally put into place, you know, my mum's mother who I'd never met and all of those things, it was just, as I said at the time, it was just like another piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and I'm feeling her energy right at this very moment, which is just beautiful. So thank you so much, Julie. I've really loved it, and I'm looking forward to us talking much more in the future.
Me too.
So everyone, the fact that you have found this program, you've been led here, the fact that you've been able to experience some of today or all of today, it's a wonderful thing, and it shows me how deeply connected we all are. So I'd like to end up by reminding you that all the catch-up links and everything else is available on angellight777.com and angelheartradio.com if you want to listen to the podcast. You know, we're on so many platforms. It's staggering to me how many platforms we are on. It's really important as well for me to remind you to be kind to yourself and be good to you, and to remind you how beautiful and blessed you are. It doesn't matter what you've done in your life, what you've thought or said. Come back to the truth of the love that you are, because that will lead you and guide you forevermore throughout your earthly walk here in the truth of your magnificence. And it's an important message for us all to remember. We are beautiful, magnificent beings of light, and we radiate so much further and brighter than we have any concept that we do. So join us next time. We've got Catherine Hahn next time. We're very excited to have Catherine. And you can tune into A Vision of Angels on the 1st and 4th Fridays in the USA, which are the 1st and 4th Saturdays in Australia. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Carol.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. And stop. Oh, it's still recording apparently. Yes, I do.
Yes, you are still recording.
Okay.